Pandemic. Now, colleagues, one housekeeping bit of business. I will be taking 15 minutes at the end of today's meeting to go into committee business. There's a few things about our upcoming study on the motion that was passed July 9th on the We Charity issue. So I'm going to adjourn or at least excuse our witnesses about 2:45 p.m. Witnesses, just be prepared for that. And we will take 15 minutes, colleagues, to go over committee business at that time. For the benefit of our witnesses, I would ask you again, I'm sure you're all familiar with the procedure. When you are speaking, if you start in one official language, I would ask that you complete your entire presentation or answer a question in the language which you start. If you're switching between French and English, you can do so, but alternating English to French on the channel. However, my strong suggestion to you is you keep one language only when you're making a statement or answering a question. That would greatly assist our interpreters. Colleagues as well, you have all received just very recently both Mr. Matthews' opening statements in both official languages. However, many of you may not have had an opportunity to read through that yet. In that case, I'm going to be asking Mr. Matthews to deliver his opening statement. And hopefully Mr. Matthews is no longer than 10 minutes. And then we will go directly into questions. And with that, colleagues, I will turn it over to Mr. Matthews. Mr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chair and members, and thank you for inviting me back. And Mr. Chair, I hear you loud and clear on the length of opening remarks. I will be less than 10 minutes, I promise. I do have a number of colleagues with me here today. I'm not going to name them all. Just given that we have a fair amount of time together today, I thought I would bring some additional people with me, just in case there's questions on the broader operations of the department. But I will mention Michael Vandergrift, the Associate Deputy Minister, as well as Ms. Ariane Reza, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister of Procurement, because you'll be hearing from those two for sure, I think. And the others I will introduce if I need some help answering questions, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. Since I was last here on June 16th, we've seen an easing of restrictions, a gradual easing of restrictions across many provinces. And while there may be a drop in active cases since my last appearance, we must remain cautious and prepare for a second wave. And the members from the previous appearances will be aware that the government has used a two-pronged approach for procuring personal protective equipment and supplies: purchasing and importing from overseas suppliers, and fostering a domestic supply chain with eager and willing Canadian manufacturers. There were some challenges along the way, but our approach has shown signs of success. I have spoken to this committee before about the volatile market and intense competition for PPE around the world. And our experiences early on led us to adjust our approach on the ground in China to secure supply chains, as well as other countries, particularly from those from new suppliers. A steady flow of orders has made its way to Canada, with more than 100 flights of supplies from China, along with maritime shipments for items such as hand sanitizer, gloves, and gowns. Although not at the pace we were seeing over the spring and early summer, we will continue to see shipments come through both by air and by sea as long-term orders continue to be filled. Our overseas orders are being increasingly supplemented by domestic purchases, thanks in part to a call out in early March to suppliers for much needed goods and services during this crucial time. Our procurement experts engage directly with thousands of these suppliers, and through combined efforts of my department, PSPC, and ISED, the government has entered into 147 contracts, including 137 contracts with Canadian companies as a result of that call out. Companies such as GM Canada, the Canadian Shield, and Fluid Energy have stepped up to start making the necessary goods and supplies, including completely new products that have required the retooling of production lines. Because of companies like these, 44% of the dollar value of contracts is for goods that are being made in Canada, including surgical gowns, non-surgical masks, face shields, and hand sanitizer. PSPC is now in a much stronger and more stable position, and that has allowed us to shift our procurement strategy to increasing our purchases of domestic supply for key commodities. With our most immediate needs now filled, PSPC has closed its call to action and is returning to competitive procurement opportunities where requirements permit. For instance, we have recently launched a series of tenders for goods such as non-medical masks and face shields, and these have attracted hundreds of bids. One of these, a request for proposal for cloth masks, is open exclusively to Indigenous-led businesses, helping to spread economic opportunities to underrepresented groups throughout the country. Mr. Chair, the department has secured significant amounts of PPE and other medical equipment and supplies to support frontline healthcare workers across the country, both for short and long-term needs. PSPC is also helping meet other needs for PPE beyond the health sector. In June, the department launched a supply hub to bring together organizations buying and selling personal protective equipment. This hub connects Canadian organizations from coast to coast to coast with federal, provincial, territorial, and other resources and information about PPE, including important guidance on what PPE is needed for specific occupations and work settings. Earlier this week, Minister Anand announced the Essential Services Contingency Reserve, which is an emergency backstop that will provide organizations with PPE on a cost recovery basis. It is intended to prevent significant disruptions in services to Canadians. This contingency reserve will help essential service sectors, such as agriculture and transportation, energy and manufacturing, bridge urgent and short-term gaps to avoid any significant disruptions to services to Canadians. This is also part of the Safe Restart Agreement recently announced by the government, and under this agreement, the government will waive any cost for requests from provincial and territorial governments to use the contingency reserve. This reserve will begin operations on August 3rd. I can assure the committee that the department is working non-stop to ensure that Canada has the supplies and equipment it needs to combat COVID-19. I also want to take this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to transparency and accountability in our efforts to procure these supplies. To that end, PSPC is working progressively towards releasing a more detailed account of our efforts in keeping Canadians safe in the coming weeks. To conclude, Mr. Chair, as the pandemic situation has evolved, so has the department's strategy. What remains constant is our efforts to do everything possible to acquire the necessary goods and services needed for our essential healthcare workers and other government departments. Thank you, and I'm now happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews, and we'll start with a 6-minute round of questioning, and our first intervener will come from Mr. Abutif.
Well, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon all. Thank you, Mr. Matthew, for your presentation. The question is, where is in the government priorities is the procurement for life-saving ventilators?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question of procurement of ventilators, and I should mention for members that the updated reporting that the PSPC does on its procurement activities, the webpage was updated earlier this morning, so I would encourage members to take a look at the updated quantities. So what we're seeing on ventilators is on the domestic front, as you will recall, members, there was an effort by Canadian companies to stand up manufacturing. It's a little bit behind schedule, frankly. We have 2 of the domestic manufacturers now have the required regulatory approval and have started to deliver. But it's slower than originally scheduled. Not a shock, given that these were taking on new manufacturing processes and supply lines, etc. And then there's also orders that have continued to come in from international. The number of ventilators received as of the web page that was updated this morning is 409, and there's been 40,500 actually ordered.
So the report I have in front of me before you mention your updates is that you only received 0.9% of the quantity ordered. Is that number still valid?
So the number is updated as of this morning, so 409 out of 40,500, and there has been about 200 or some come in since the last web chart update. The domestic ones were scheduled to ramp up over the summer, so this is not, it was kind of back end weighted, but there's still it's the lowest percentage of the ones on our list.
I mean, this is only 1%, so the 0.9% number I have in front of me is correct based on the numbers that you provided. Don't you think that these are very, very important to have, and what we're having is not really leaving us enough protection? God forbid, will be a second wave coming?
I think, Mr. Chair, to properly answer that question, you'd have to turn to what's actually going on with our friends at the Public Health Agency. There are still ventilators in the stockpile that provinces could ask for if needed. So there's not a shortage right now. But we are certainly working actively to accelerate delivery of the ventilators we have ordered, and it's an ongoing effort on our part.
Based on your knowledge and information of the current stock or current inventory that we have right now, how long we can survive until the wave of a second order comes through?
I think, Mr. Chair, that's actually a question better posed to the health professionals, Ministry of Health, Public Health Agency of Canada, just because in terms of burn rates and where provinces sit, that's more questions for the medical experts.
So there's no communication between yourself as somehow the supplier and the health agencies as the recipient of the product or the client, basically, on the demand and what is needed. So how can we suggest that we're very prepared if that line of communication is not open?
Well, I think the line of communication, Mr. Chair, starts with the ordering. And so the orders actually come through in terms of quantity and what types of products come through the Public Health Agency. They're aware of the delivery schedules. And as I mentioned, there are ventilators in the warehouse right now. And, the ventilator purchase was a long-term kind of arrangement. We're expecting a steady supply all the way into 2021. So we're actively monitoring the delivery, but we're not, current stage, we're not seeing a shortage of ventilators, I guess, if that is your question.
But isn't logical to suggest, or at least to think that we need to know, I mean, they place the orders on what anticipation? Like they place the orders based on what? They're getting their product in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. So they know their numbers. You probably don't, which is you should, I believe. And if they're placing orders, that means their expectation that they can get to fill their stock within certain time. And so far it's been since March. It's our 5-6 months now, and our basic 4 or 5 months, and we still don't have less 1%. So where's the problem?
So there's a couple of elements to this question, Mr. Chair. Number one, the delivery schedule that was agreed upon was not all at once. It was staggered out into 2021. But as I've indicated, domestic has been slower to deliver. On the international ones, the market itself has been one that has been very tight. And so our international orders have been delayed as well. And as I mentioned, we are, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen an increase of 200 come in, and we're expecting that number to grow more rapidly than it has in the past. I'll stop there, I think, Mr. Chair.
Okay. How much time I have, Mr. Chair?
Less than 30 seconds.
Okay. So I will close on this. I think this is very important, and I would like to see that some feedback from Mr. Matthew on how are we moving forward and what the expectations of deliveries, receiving the product, and that with the current inventory level that we have right now. I think that would be very beneficial. And thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Zubari. Mr. Zubari, welcome to our committee, and you have the floor for 6 minutes. I think you're still on mute, Mr. Zubari.
I'd like to thank Mr. Matthews for giving us testimony and his time here with the committee. I'll have a number of questions, and feel free, Mr. Matthews, to supplement what you had were speaking about within your opening statement. You can use this time to elaborate upon that if you want to. I'd like to know, with respect to a second wave, what is being done to prepare for a second wave, if you can just elaborate on that.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And this really speaks to the ongoing delivery of PPE. As mentioned or touched on in my opening remarks, the strategy was twofold, order internationally, but also stand up domestic production. And so we are still seeing orders come in, and many of our orders actually extend into 2021, so we can ensure there's a steady stream of supply. What we've seen to date is also, domestic production has ramped up in a number of areas, and we've spoken about that before at this committee, but face shields, very successful in terms of getting our own domestic capacity. You've also got the ventilators, which we just touched on as domestic capacity there. And I believe this committee would remember that we have had discussions about domestic capacity coming online for surgical masks end of July with one particular deal and then N95 masks towards the end of August, early September. So that's all ramping up. And I did not mention hand sanitizer as well as some other things. So really the second wave thing is to make sure that we still have orders coming in. Obviously, we can place more orders if we need to, but products still coming in. The warehouse space itself is full. We're actually securing additional warehouse space for our client, the Public Health Agency of Canada, which just gives you an indication of the stock that's coming in. And then I should have stressed this in my opening remarks, and I did not. This is over and above what provinces, territories are ordering, and they are still the primary provider of PPE for the medical system. So again, we are all very much in a backstop world, but we've continued to order and going very well. And if you look at what came in during June, one flight a day, big numbers started to come in, and you'll see the updated web chart that I mentioned earlier today. But orders will continue to arrive coming weeks, coming months.
Thank you. So you touched upon domestic companies. Can you elaborate a bit about the percentage of contracts that are going to domestic companies, and give us some examples of domestic companies you're dealing with?
Certainly, I will start, and thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think there's two ways to look at the domestic contracting. Number one is by number of contracts. Number two is by dollar value. By dollar value, domestically manufactured products is above 40%. And part of that story is some of the more high dollar value items are made in Canada. We've mentioned ventilators already. Gowns are also one that has had a big domestic success story, and they're a big part of that as well. If you're actually looking at number of contracts, I think you're about 22% of domestic contracts in terms of number of contracts as a percentage, but 44% by value. The companies, we go across the board, and I will turn to my friend Ms. Reza for some examples in a moment. But General Motors, I mentioned in my remarks on surgical masks. You've got Fluid Energy for hand sanitizer. You've got Bauer for face shields. You've got Canada Goose for gowns. And Ariane, I'm drawing a blank on the company from New Brunswick who makes the reagents for us. So can you pipe in, please?
Yes, that would be Luminatra.
Thank you. So it's across the categories. The one that has not yet and will come online shortly is the domestic manufacturing for N95 masks. That will be starting up in late August, early September, and that will be a critical component as well.
Thank you. So that kind of segues into the next question, which I want to ask, which is around employees. And we're starting to open up our economy again. Our economies within different provinces. Employees are starting to return back to their workspaces. Can you speak about what's being done to make buildings safer, make workspaces safer?
Certainly, and I will turn in a moment to Monsieur Stéphane Derry, who's the Assistant Deputy Minister of Real Property. What you have to remember is PSPC and the federal government has a national presence, and the circumstances in every jurisdiction are different, both in terms of active caseload, but also how the local health authority is handling them. So we have to find a model that respects both, our role as a national employer, but also respects the local circumstances. So Stéphane, do you want to add some commentary on the efforts we're making to get ready and support this?
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, pleasure to talk about what we're doing. Our organization has been proactive in preparing the workplace for employee to come back to work. It's 4 areas. Really, we've been working with Health Canada, PIAC, in fact, to ensure that we're following the guideline and the health guideline. The most important thing for us is health and safety of employees. So we have increased from cleaning and disinfection. We have increased our cleaning of high touch point area and a highly used area, doorknob, everything. We have increased that to twice a day upon recommendation from Health Canada. We're also tracking and reporting specialized cleaning. So if anybody is suspected to have COVID-19, they can call a number, and we put in place a cleaning protocol. So we have our team go in and clean to ensure that there's no risk of contamination. And there's no
risk. Derry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're completely out of time. I would ask, sir, since it seems that you have much more to offer, if you can provide the rest of your testimony in writing as quickly as possible to our clerk, and I will ensure through our clerk that we have that testimony included and distributed to all of our committee members. But now we're going on to Madame Vignola. 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
6 minutes, please. Hello. Thank you for being there today. Mr. Matthews, in June, Ms. Anand explained in terms of the international contractors that because we want to minimize the risks of having our commodities and so on taken away, or for security reasons, she didn't want to name them. Is the risk still quite as high?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
The risk is still high in some commodities. Where we are, N95 masks is one that we're continuing to worry about. So it is a commodity by commodity risk. The risk is less where we're getting domestic supply, is the short answer to the question. But where we are still reliant on supply coming from overseas, we are I guess, guarding our supplier information carefully to make sure we have access to that supply chain on a continual basis should we need it. And I think I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, because I sense the member has more questions.
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you. Yesterday, we heard that equipment that was supposed to go to Quebec was taken hostage in China. What can be done so that equipment can be brought over to Canada as quickly as possible, and what are we doing to avoid that this kind of situation will occurs again in the future?
Mr. Chair, I cannot speak to that exact case, but I can tell you about the members about the measures we have taken to ensure the security of the supply line from a federal perspective. And I suspect the case in question may be a provincial order, but I'm not certain. The key to bringing goods from China or any other country into Canada is, number one, securing your supply line. So having a good in-country process to make sure you get the product, have a place to store it at the airports. It has to be there 2 weeks in advance with all the appropriate paperwork to clear customs. And even when that is all done, like most countries, there's always the possibility of a random inspection. And so the Chinese government does that on a fairly regular basis. So it's important to have multiple shipments there. So if an order does get held up because of a scheduled inspection, there's an alternative.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Over the first few months of the pandemic in Canada, we saw that there were some compliance problems. Is that still the case, first of all? And in those problems, in terms of those problems, was it just foreign suppliers, or were Canadian companies also part of the problem?
The quality of goods, because it's medical equipment and personal protective equipment, making sure they meet standard is always paramount. So it's something that we have been worried about from day one with our colleagues at the Public Health Agency, who are responsible for the actual testing. There were some quality issues early on. We've talked about them at this committee. Some temporary, some ongoing. And I would also highlight that even when you stand up domestic manufacturing, someone who's producing something for the first time, you have to make sure that's properly tested before it's put into the system. So it's something we continually monitor and test. We haven't had, on the mask front, which is the one that got the most attention, any new failed tests lately. But Health Canada will continue to test new products and products as they come in to make sure they're suitable before they go into the system. But no major issues recently, but that doesn't mean we're not still checking.
Merci. Donc,
Thank you. So if I understood correctly, in Canada, our businesses are reliable and the problem was mostly overseas. Okay. In June, we heard that some companies were making disinfectant with technical ethanol, and one of these groups had a contract with the Canadian government. And unlike other companies, this Food Energy Group simply had to put a sticker on saying that it used different kind of ethanol instead of removing its products from the market. We heard that there were about 40 other companies that did not meet the standards. Of those 40, how many have contracts with the government?
On this one, I will probably turn to my colleague, Ms. Reza, to add some more detail into this. But what I would stress, just to return to your previous question, I don't want to leave you with the impression that none of the domestic manufacturers haven't had any challenges on quality as they stand up their new production. So it's not just international; there is some domestic as well that we've had to keep an eye on. On fluid energy, on the hand sanitizer, there are different grades of ethanol. Ariane, do you want to sort of walk through the different grades and where our contracts are?
Reza, before you begin, I must say that we're completely out of time, and so I would ask that you provide your testimony in written form to our clerk and do so as quickly as possible, and then that testimony will be distributed to all of our committee members. We'll now go to our next intervention. It comes from Mr. Green for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and it's certainly good to be back. I appreciate Mr. Matthews providing his remarks. We have, through data compiled from the Public Services and Procurement Canada under the supply in the Canadian healthcare sector, dated the 17th of July 2020, a chart which lays out close to 172 million N95 masks with the quantities received subject to quality assurance tests of roughly 22,665,310. And you have touched on this in the previous questions, but I do feel the need to go back to this, knowing that in the initial orders, when we had ordered 11 million, 9 million were deemed insufficient. To date, how many N95 masks have been purchased which have passed the test?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So on the N95 front, and I would refer members again to the updated web chart that came out earlier. We're actually at a number now of 50 million, 50.6 million that have come through and are acceptable and are in Canada. There's ongoing testing, and I want to stress that because of the importance of these masks. The issues the member mentioned in terms of rejects, if I can use that word earlier, we are not seeing that right now. So that was, that was in the past, but I'm not underscoring or understating the importance of ongoing testing. So we've seen a pretty good jump recently on the N95s, good quality, but we'll keep monitoring it as we go forward.
So going back to that, clearly it's still an issue. Of the 9.8 million defective N90 masks that have been separated from the respirators that have been received, first of all, have they been separated from the ones that have been received, or are they still in your total global numbers?
The numbers we produced this morning, we've now taken out any of the rejects or that didn't pass the quality standard, so they are no longer in those numbers. And so the ones you're seeing on the web chart now are the ones that are acceptable.
Okay, that's positive news. You mentioned in reference to your statement, your procurement experts on the ground. Does that includes Deloitte? Is that correct?
So there's a group of, when I'm talking about experts, I'm talking about PSPC. We do have procurement experts. Not to say we don't get help from outside, but I was referring to our own team.
And you also mentioned in your reference to the immediate needs now being filled. You will recall, most likely at length, we had, certainly from myself, grave concerns around the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile. I'm to understand that there's been a closed call to action, and you're returning to, quote unquote, your competitive procurement opportunities where requirements permit. Where does the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile stand in this moment, understanding we're going to probably be into a second wave?
So I won't give exact numbers, Mr. Chair, but a couple of key points. As I mentioned earlier, we've secured additional warehouse space, just to give you a sense that it's bigger, and there's more to come on that front. So stockpile certainly well in excess of what they were earlier. And
if I could, just for a moment, just to be clear, for clarity, for people who are watching, you had 13 warehouses. You shut down 2 or 3 of them. So have you just reopened the old warehouses to restock the national emergency, or have you now actually purchased and acquired new warehouses from the ones that you guys closed down last year?
So, Mr. Chair, the additional warehouse space I'm referring to is additional lease space that will be put in place. There's some temporary space has been found, but we're also looking for some more permanent or semi-permanent space, I can say that. We're not looking at purchasing, and I just wanted to say, so it's leasing.
Sure.
But the indication that the Public Health Agency has asked us to acquire additional space just gives you a sense of stockpiles growing is kind of the message there.
It also gives me a sense that they made a grave mistake in shutting them down in the first place. And I have concerns in your statement over your remarks on Minister Anand announcing the Essential Services Contingency Reserve, because there was some deflection the last time around the National Emergency Stockpile where the minister, members of this committee will recall, Minister Hadju really pivoted on what the mandate was, which was clearly written out and expressed in all the policies surrounding the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile. Is Minister Anand in her recent announcement of the Essential Services Contingency Reserve creating a new body to replace the National Emergency Stockpile, or are they just simply pivoting and calling these new leased warehouses something different to provide essentially the same outcome under the mandate of the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. And no, very different. As mentioned, the Essential Services Contingency Reserve announced by Minister Anand is around a backstop to support essential services and industry. And those are things like energy, information, technology, finance, food, water, transportation, whereas and manufacturing in certain key areas. So it's really very much a backstop for those key industries if they are unable to acquire PPE as the economy reopens. And we would expect them to exhaust all the stops to acquire it on their own, and then maybe look to other sources. So this is very much a last resort.
Private sector?
Absolutely. Private sector, industry associations, other levels of government, and this would be a backstop for a short-term supply in the event that they're unable to do so through those.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our second round, which will be 5-minute interventions. We will begin with Mrs. Block for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank our witnesses for joining us today. And I would just build on what my colleagues questioning just previous to mine would be that I certainly hope this contingency reserve is going to be managed better than the NES. I want to ask some questions around the prioritization of the contracts that we enter into. Does the department have any guidelines to prioritize contracting with PPE manufacturers?
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm assuming this is grounded in when we're sole sourcing. When there's a competition, obviously, there's a competition based on requirements, and the contract is awarded to the winning bid. When we were in sole source, we were looking at some key criteria. Number one, established supply chains, ability to deliver quickly at volume. Were they already in the business? But speedy delivery was absolutely first and foremost, and quality assurance.
Thank you. So I guess I'm wondering, did they include contracting from countries with who had the same values that we do here in Canada, or with strong human rights records, such as South Korea or Taiwan?
So before we enter into a contract, Mr. Chair, with a company of any sort, there is a check done against its track record to ensure that we are not entering into contracts with companies with values that may not comply with ours. So that process still holds, regardless of whether we're sole sourcing or running a competition.
Thank you. So I'm sure everyone has seen the horrific videos of Uyghur Muslims being led onto trains blindfolded and chained together. I'm also sure that the department is aware of the New York Times article from July 19th, which reported that at least 17 companies in China are using forced Uyghur labor to manufacture PPE. Can the department tell this committee if any of the PPE we have purchased has been manufactured by forced labor?
We have no direct link, Mr. Chair, in terms of being aware of that. So not aware of any of those issues. Might be interesting, Mr. Chair, if the member will indulge us. There is an ethical apparel policy the government has that it might be worth Ms. Reza sort of spending 2 minutes on what that policy is, just for background for the committee.
You know, I'd actually, instead of hearing that, just like to follow up on saying that I'm really shocked that the department doesn't know if forced labor is being used to produce PPE for Canadians. I'm sure that we would all agree that Canadians deserve to know if their government is financially supporting forced labor. And I guess I would expect the department to make that a priority given the reports that we are seeing in the news. So sure, if you want to follow up with what your protocol is, great. But I just think it's shocking that that we don't know.
If I could clarify, Ms. Chair, we have checked with the contractors we deal with. We are not aware of any link there. So we have proactively checked, have not found anything.
Okay, I appreciate that. So can you tell me what precautions have been put in place to ensure that this won't happen? What sorts of things are in place already to ensure that we don't end up procuring from a company that is using forced labor?
So, Mr. Chair, this is where I would like to turn to my colleague, Ms. Reza, to talk about the ethical apparel policy, because it is exactly fundamental to this question. So, Ariane, do you want to chime in? I suspect the member's looking for a quick answer because she's running out of time.
About 30 seconds or less, if that's at all possible.
Okay, I'll be speedy. Just to note that since 2018, we have introduced it's called the Policy on Ethical Procurement of Apparel, which requires all bidders responding to our competitions to self-certify that between them and their first-tier suppliers that there is a right to certify that they comply with human rights and labor standards. In addition, we've been working on changing our code of conduct for procurement to ensure that matters of these concerns are also identified and our suppliers understand the code of conduct that we expect them to adhere to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll now go to our next 5-minute intervention. It comes from Mr. Drouin.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to thank the witnesses who are appearing with us today. For some of them, this may be the 4th time, so thank you for taking the time to be here, especially in July. I have a question. Since I'm a member representing the National Capital Region, I represent many members of the public service, and the Phoenix issue is something that is ongoing. We did hear about it during the last election, so I'd like to have an update, a potential update. Were there impacts because of COVID-19 on that? And in the future, we know that collective agreements will create a backlog because people working on Phoenix had to work on that, on the new collective agreements and the adjustments. Do we expect the same problems as last time?
Thank you for the question. And so Phoenix is a really interesting story during COVID in that the work continued largely uninterrupted remotely. So some really good work, and I will turn to my colleague Jeannie in a moment to get into details, but the queue has continued to drop. So we are down, the backlog is now down to 301,000 in total, and which is a really good improvement, and it continues to drop. And the member touched on the importance of collective agreements because historically, collective agreements, when they're signed, there is a large retroactive piece which creates a lot of transactions which effectively impacts the ability to get to the backlog. And one of our areas of focus has been to find a more efficient way to deal with the backlog created by, to deal with the additional transactions created by a collective agreement being reached. So Jeannie, do you want to maybe give a quick update on statistics and then how we now deal with collective agreements?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Alors, c'est sûr et certain. Merci.
Yes, thank you very much. So in terms of collective agreements, we really assign specific resources to help implement the collective agreements. So we're looking to finish the work by the end of the year for certain ones, 2014, I believe, and we're starting with the next ones. Inaudible to the interpreter. The interpreter notes that the sound is not helpful for clear interpreting. We're trying to work more effectively without having to do so much manual input. That is why we have the possibility of working on collective agreements more quickly and those adjustments more quickly. Of course, when the 2014 collective agreements came through, we were in the middle of the Phoenix crisis because that was in 2016, 2017. So now we've put in place more specialized resources, and we've been working with the Treasury Board, and that has helped us to plan together when we will be able to put forward the measures in the collective agreements. So as Mr. Matthews indicated, since COVID began, we have still been able to continue our activities remotely, and we've also made headway in bringing down the backlog and the total number of transactions. Thank you very much, Ms. Bethel. Another question I have is the return to work for public servants. I'm on one side of the river in Ontario, and Mr. McKinnon is on the other side of the river, also representing many public servants. And Mr. Matthews, I think you referred to them as well in terms of reopening the economy and how that impacts the two provinces. Can you or one of your employees give us an update on the work plan for the return to work for the public service?
Peut-être ça peut donner l'occasion pour M. Derry.
This could give Mr. Derry the opportunity to continue his answer to a previous question.
15 seconds, if that's entirely possible.
Bonne chance.
I can try. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We are working with the bylaw of the municipality to ensure that we're adopting the, like as an example, in Ottawa, you have to wear masks, so signage at the front of all of our building in Ottawa, indicating to people that they have to wear masks when they're in common area. We've increased the cleaning. We're in constant communication with both city in Ottawa, Gatineau, and across the country also. And we instituted a dashboard to ensure that all our facility, either lease or own, are meeting the criteria and are ensuring that they're meeting the province, but also ensuring the quality of space and ensuring the safety of employee.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your economy of words on that. We will now go to Mr. McCauley for 5 minutes.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and welcome back. I just want to follow up, please, just on the comment about that Ms. Block was bringing up about the forced labor. I'm looking at the buy and sell. It says ethical procurement certification solicitation clause requires the bidders and their first-tier subcontractors comply. So second-tier contractors don't. And your comment is very, very worrying about self-certifying. It scares me greatly that we're relying on a corrupt, despotic government and a system that is imprisoning millions of people and using forced labor and forced transfer labor to cover up their forced labor. And we're going to deal with it on a self-certify. Please tell me I'm wrong here, that it's not, as it seems, self-certify, that we're relying on them to self-certifying that they're complying with our standards.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'll start the question, but I will flip back to Ms. Reza in a moment, I think. So self-certification is the starting point. You will appreciate that when we're dealing with suppliers in other countries, we don't always have access to the same types of information that we would in a Canadian context.
But let me interrupt there, though. When we don't have that access to information, when we're dealing with a despotic regime that is jailing people for their religious views or others, shouldn't we take steps then to say, well, we can't get the proper information? we're not going to deal with them, or we're going to take added steps? Like, what added steps is Deloitte and our experts on the ground in China doing to make sure that not one piece of goods is coming into our country that has been made by forced labor or the forced transfer labor?
So it's a two-part answer. Self-certification is one. The second part is the regime
And
that
that's a
actually
completely
checked.
invalid answer. That's completely invalid to expect the Chinese government to self-certify. So let's skip that. What's the second one?
So the second part is we do go back against all our contractors and check their track record in terms of any charges they have faced. And if they've been found or pled guilty to charges that are on the list, then they're not eligible. So that's the two-step regime.
What charges? Like pled guilty to the Chinese regime charging them?
So, Mr. Chair, you mentioned two-step process. We've got the regime that checks against charges against the country. I should ask Ariana if she wants to add anything to this.
Yeah, please. And point out how I'm wrong here. Like, this is very worrying that it seems there's very little oversight apart from trusting this despotic country to self-certify, and that they're not breaking. It's not breaking any laws in China to have forced labor, the Uyghurs. So please tell me how I'm wrong here.
So Ariane, did you want to jump in?
No, I was just going to confirm that, as you indicated, there is a two-key process at the heart of this, looking at the self-certification that we put in place between Canada and our contractor and their first level sub, complemented, of course, by the integrity regime. In addition, there are other pieces underway, including the work we're doing with combating human traffic, looking at our code of conduct, working with our suppliers to review as much as possible their ethical supply chain, adding in risk assessment.
So we subcontract to Deloitte, who's the primary, who may subcontract to someone else. And we have just two levels that we look at. So we can't count on a self-certification, and we certainly can't count on your second backstop of, well, if they haven't been convicted of crimes. So we could be very much potentially buying from goods from forced labor camps or the forced transfer of Uyghurs, Muslims, Turks, Christians, and others. Like, again, I'd like to believe that we're not, but it doesn't sound like our checks are actually going to work. We're not dealing with the USA or Vietnam where they're actually basic rule of law. We've seen them kidnap our citizens. We've seen them sell us faulty masks. We're dealing with not exactly a country that shares our values. So they could very easily skip around our simple, basic two-step process. Am I right?
So, Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left? I have the sense we're running on a...
Absolutely none. But I do encourage you to give a fulsome answer to Mr. McCauley's last question. If you could do so once again as quickly as possible in writing and direct that to our clerk. We will now go to Mr. Johari for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Matthews, and your colleagues for the testimony today. And I'd like to also thank your department for working so hard, making sure our nation taken care of during these difficult times. I want to follow up on a topic that was brought up earlier on the ESCR. You categorized it, or you explained it as this is a short-term backstop for key industries, and it's going to be launched as of August 3rd. That's what I heard and jotted down in your testimony. Can you please explain why August 3rd, why not earlier, and also who can apply for this, and what is the process application, how long does it take, and what are the criteria?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So a couple of points on this one. In terms of why August 3rd, we wanted to make sure it was up and running and the process was clear and people had a chance to investigate the process before applying.
I meant why not earlier?
Why not earlier? A few days after announcement, just to give people some time to be ready. So we're getting close to being ready to go, but it's about a week or so away. I guess a week and a bit. Who can apply in terms of, first kind of lens is, are you in one of the 12 essential services? And I listed those earlier. So that's the first key. I mentioned short term in that this is not meant to be an ongoing source of supply for an industry. This is 30 to 45 days worth if you're really in a pinch is kind of the model there. And because of that, it does have to be fairly quick decision making. So a given industry would apply. It would get vetted, if it's in the transportation sector, it would come through the Department of Transport, who would do some assessment. And we will be looking very quickly at whether they, are one of the essential services, is the need proven, have they exhausted all their efforts, those types of things.
How long this process would take?
We're hoping it'll be within a week. It's pretty quick. So again, it's something new for us, but it's got to be quick to be useful because it's meant to be a short-term backstop. And obviously, if it takes months and months, that's not effective.
And what type of PPEs are available as part of the reserve?
Largely non-medical. So you'll see KN95 masks, you'll see cloth masks, hand sanitizer, things like that will be stocked in there, coveralls. And I should have also mentioned that part of the other reason for the delay was to give industry in August 3rd, give industry a chance to organize as well, because we do want industries kind of self-organizing to the extent they can before they turn to the backstop.
Yeah. So thank you on that. So talking about industries, I'm switching to a different topic. You talked about the fact that 22% of the contract that's been awarded are domestic contract, and it's worth about 44% of the value, which is great. And this is part of our strategy, that building the capacity. One of the things you mentioned that I'd like you to expand on was that the domestic has been slow to deliver. Can you expand on that one, and why has it been slow to deliver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should be more precise with my comments. Some pieces of domestic have been slow to deliver. If you look at face shields, very quick, quite miraculous, frankly, and really on board quickly. Things like ventilators, if you're getting into manufacturing ventilators for the first time, need supply chains, need raw materials. So that takes time to stand up. So I would say face shields, absolutely very efficient. Ventilators, a little longer. Other factors that would kind of slow an industry down in terms of ramping up, bringing your workforce back, making sure your workspace is properly organized to reflect a COVID environment is part of the story as well. And access to raw materials is big. If you look at gowns, where the Canadian industry has done a fantastic job of responding, the material used to make traditional gowns not readily available. And so Health Canada approved as regulators some additional materials, different types. But again, to go and get that takes time. So it really depended on the complexity of the good being manufactured.
Okay, great. I got about 30 seconds, and I want to go back to a different topic, the N95, and you highlighted the risk, and you said there's a couple of different risks: quality and access to the supply. And what are we doing domestically to eliminate those risks?
So that's a really important question, because N95, most of our masks, all of our masks to date, frankly, are coming from China or the U.S. We have 3M deliveries through the U.S., the rest pretty much through China. We do have a contract with Medicom for both surgical masks and N95 masks. Surgical masks are starting to be produced this month, and the N95s late August, early September, and that will be our first domestic certified N95 mask once they're up and running.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our third round, which will be 2.5 minutes each, starting with Madame Vignola.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais continuer avec Amazon.
Thank you. I want to talk about Amazon. Amazon informed the committee that it had a contract with the government of Canada, and it was at cost. But are we to understand that Amazon is making zero profits with this contract?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So the Amazon question is an interesting one. Yes, the first part of the contract was at zero profit, and they were going to learn what it took to actually operate this business. But the other part of Amazon was that we were anticipating with our colleagues at Public Health a model where Public Health Agency was delivering goods to a broad range of locations, across many locations in every province. And that's why Amazon we thought would be useful. It turns out that the provinces actually wanted delivery to a central location. So Amazon, there's actually no activity right now against that contract because the provinces want a rather simplified delivery organization in terms of where the goods go. The Amazon model was not heavily used, so no active right now.
I see. So what explains that a publicly traded company whose objective it is to make profits accepts to sign an at-cost contract without profits with the government? And what did Amazon get out of it? If there was anything you got out of it.
I think it was out of a desire to help, and they're not the only one who've seen that. We've seen some of the gown manufacturers in Canada equally just want to contribute, keep their workforce busy, so offering us pricing that's effectively at cost. So it's something we've seen, not across the board by any means. There's still some profit making going on in some companies, but we've seen quite a few companies just want to help keep bring their workforce back and do it for zero profit.
I think that's we'll have to end that testimony on that note. We'll now go to Mr. Green for 2.5 minutes, please.
Look, Jeff Bezos made $13 billion on Monday. I'm going to get really clear to the point because I think Amazon should have been at this committee, quite frankly. What was the cost?
The actual value of the money paid to, or the amount paid to Amazon was about $200,000, give or take. And as I said, no activity going on against it now because the deliveries to the provinces were not, they're still to centralized places. So
the centralized places could have in fact been the national emergency strategic stockpiles that are put across the country for distribution?
No, these would be Mr. Chair, every province would have a location where, because provinces are the primary provider of PPE and healthcare. So they would all have a central location in their province that they would use to then manage distribution.
So is it safe to say then that the public sector can, on a move forward basis with Canada Post and Purolator, be able to deliver on behalf of Canadians and in the future waves of crisis? Can we now cut our relationship with Amazon?
As I said, Mr. Chair, there's no activity going on right now against the contract. We have been using Purolator and Canada Post heavily, as well as other companies, to help us deliver on these things. I think it depends on the model. If it's a relatively simple model as it is right now in terms of location of deliveries, that requires one sort of expertise. If it's more complicated than that, that could be a different model altogether.
But how have we not learned lessons? We're 4 months into this that would suggest a modeling going forward. I have deep concerns, Mr. Chair, and to members of this committee, that we're still not adequately prepared for future waves of this in terms of how we're doing logistics and supply chain management of our national emergency stockpile, of our future procurements. And I would like to have thought that 4 months in, we would have gotten into an integrated supply chain that would allow us to kind of look into the future months and say, second wave, this is what we're looking at, this is what we're going to be procuring, and here are the set-asides that we're going to have for the national emergency stockpile. Would you care to comment on that?
I think part of that question would have to be answered by Public Health Agency and in some respect, the provinces, as provinces are kind of the front line. How we organize as a federal government is very much in concert with the relationship with the provinces.
We still hear a whole of government approach language being used by the Liberal government. My apologies, through you, Mr. Chair, and yet here we are, where public health and procurement still don't even know what the other one needs in terms of future planning for the NES.
We'll have to end the current testimony at that point. Colleagues, we're now going to our second hour, and because we are taking only 45 minutes worth of questions before I go into committee business, I'm suggesting that the first round of questions will be 5 minutes in duration, followed by a second round of 4 minutes, and the last round of 2 minutes each. We will start with a 5-minute round. Mr. McCauley. Mr. McCauley?
Sorry, you're breaking up. Sorry, you're breaking up there. I couldn't hear you. Bad internet connection.
Yeah, 5-minute rounds, Mr. McCauley.
Great, thanks. Mr. Matthews, I want to talk about the Nuke Tech contract that was awarded to that Chinese company for the security systems within our embassies. How did they win this? Was it purely on a low bid?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair, and let me know if you can't hear me. I'm getting a message that my internet connection is weak as well. So this was a competition, and it was based on two things: meeting the requirements as defined.
But they wanted just on a low bid?
Lowest compliant bid. So yes, you had to have a product that met the requirements, and then there was a price factor.
Do you know why the national security exemption was not used for this RFP, considering we use NSC for everything from paper clips to photocopy paper? Why it wasn't done?
So this is a standing offer that will allow for the machines to be ordered if desired. The requirement at the time identified the client had no security requirement on these machines. The Global Affairs Canada has now indicated they want to have another look at that, because that would result in a very different type of competition. If
so the client was Global Affairs on this?
So Global Affairs was our main client to put the standing offer in place, but the intent was that if other departments wanted to order from it, they can, but they would have to understand again what their security requirements were.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce a matter at hand motion in regards to this, and I'll do it now and use up my 5 minutes so not to take away the time from the others.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley, and I've taken a look at it. It is admissible, but I would ask that you read the entire motion into the record for the benefit of our colleagues.
Perfect. That pursuant to Standing Order 108-2, officials from Communication Security Establishment and PSPC provide the committee with a briefing on the Nuke Tech security equipment contract, that the relevant departments provide all documents, memorandums, and briefing materials related to the Nuke Tech security equipment contract, and that the meeting be held no later than August 31st, 2020.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have heard the details of the motion. I will assemble a speaking list. If you wish to speak to the motion, please indicate by raising your virtual hand, and I'll ask Paul to assist me in that to see if we can get through this. Are there any members who wish to speak to the motion presented by Mr. McCauley? I do not. Oh, Mr. Joanne.
Yeah, just a question for Mr. McCauley. I know he's given the date before the end of the month, and I know that we will probably be discussing meetings for we. So I'm just wondering about timeline. If it does come to a priority, will he prefer to have we or our committee look at the we charity situation, or is he going to prefer, because we will have passed the motion, to look at the contracts? I'm just trying to get a sense from him.
It's just one meeting. I'm sure the chair and the clerk can figure out timing and prioritize it.
Thank you. Madame Vignola, I saw that you have a head, and then Mr. McKinnon.
I believe that it's a good idea to study this issue, especially given the international situation. With regards to Mr. Drouin's comment, I think that we can combine the We Charity study and this issue as part of our work.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. You'll have to unmute yourself. McKinnon. You'll have to unmute yourself, Steve.
Pardon. Je demanderais.
Sorry, I'd like to ask my colleague who presented a motion, why not invite Global Affairs Canada and maybe ask another committee to look at this. PSPC is only proceeding to the purchase of goods and services that are requested by other departments. The procurement it only has to do with the procurement process, and PSPC is not the final customer. maybe we could ask those to come testify or to create a study in the committees that are for whom it would be more related to.
Mr. Macaulay, do you have any final comments before I
certainly.
ask?
I think it's related to us. We've studied the NSC in the past. It's one meeting, but I also want access to the contractual and the bid information. I believe PSPC and we can certainly invite Global Affairs as well, but I think PSPC has a role not just as we'll take any contract and bid it out, but I think they have a role to ask questions about validity of the bids, not finding Canadian companies to bid on it, and other issues as well. But I would certainly be happy to have Global Affairs attend as well and explain.
Thank you. I see no other hands being raised. So Paul, I will ask you if you can conduct the recorded vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The vote is on the question on the motion moved by Mr. Macaulay. Monsieur Drouin.
En faveur.
Mr. Joe Howery.
In support.
Mr. Kosmierczak.
Support.
Mr. McKinnon. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mr. McKinnon.
Oui.
Thank you. Mr. Zuberi. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Mr. Zuberi. I think you're still muted.
En favor.
Thank you, Mr. Zuberi. Mr. Abultev.
In favor.
Ms. Block.
Yes.
Mr. Macaulay.
Yes, thank you.
Madame Vignola.
En support.
Mr. Green.
In support.
That is 10 in favor and none against, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Paul. That motion is carried, and we will be getting back to colleagues with the timing in short order. We'll perhaps discuss that further during committee business. We'll now continue on with our examination. We will go to a 5-minute round with Mr. Kosmierczak for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We understand that the Public Health Agency received $1.8 billion in their supplementary estimates for PPE, and that another $4.5 billion is allocated to provide PPE to support provinces and territories through the Safe Restart Agreement. How much of this money has been committed, and how does it break down across government, health sector, and the recently announced Essential Services Contingency Reserve?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So the funding does break down across the 3 buckets, as the member suggested. So grosso modo, we have committed $5.9 billion in terms of contracts. The vast majority of that would not be a surprise to people, I don't think, to understand that is for frontline health workers through Public Health Agency of Canada. So that's about $5.5 billion. We do have a second bucket that we don't spend much time talking about here, but we do have procurement to do to support other government departments in their PPE needs. So this would be our correctional services workers, our border guards, etc. So there's about $235 million there, give or take, that's been committed. And then the Essential Services Reserve, to date, we have committed to about $229 million. So let's call it $230 million. In contracts to stock the Essential Services Contingency Reserve. And that comes from a combination of funds that PHAC would have received in its estimates, as well as funding announced in the Safe Restart Agreement.
Great, thank you very much. And is there a projection or an expectation of who would be drawing, what types of sectors or industries would be drawing upon the Essential Reserve? Or is it simply an open category and we don't have any expectations at this point?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple of key points there. One is you do have, the applicant would have to belong to one of the 12 essential services, which I've listed off before. So that's your first test, I guess. It has to be an acute need. So part of the assessment is proving that they've actually gone through and exhausted all other means, and it really is a necessary intervention. And that they've they've got really no other alternative, or there'll be an impact on Canadians. So those are kind of the broad strokes. But the first and most important test is those 12. And do we have an expectation of who will use it? No, we don't. Within those 12, this is new. Our hope is that the private sector is able to supply PPE, but as the economy starts to open, this is really just about having a backstop in place.
Okay, gotcha, understood. On May 3rd, the Minister of PSPC announced the creation of the Supply Council. I know they've met on a number of occasions. Just wanted to get your sense of what their contribution has been to this challenge and the solutions we've brought forward. Have they been effective?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. With your permission, I'll turn to my colleague Michael Vandergrift, as he has been the key interlocutor with the Supply Council.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Mr. Chair. The Supply Council has met on 3 occasions since its creation, played a real important role in understanding what's going on with various sectors in terms of their access to personal protective equipment and other supplies. A particular note, I would say, is the work that the Supply Council did to inform the Supply Hub that Mr. Matthews referred to in his opening comments, to try to put together in one place information and resources for both suppliers of PPE and buyers of PPE. And including linking up to marketplaces that have been formed both by provinces and formed in the private sphere that try to link again those who have PPE for sale and those who need PPE. So the Supply Council played a really important role in trying to pull together and giving advice on pulling together the various sources of data that can be useful to various sectors about PPE. This includes information also on occupational health and safety guidelines, consumer advice on PPE, health and safety information, etc.
Okay, great. And the last discussion of record was posted June 22nd. Is there an anticipated future meetings of the Supply Council, or have they completed their mission?
No, there are anticipated future meetings of Supply Council, likely later this summer.
Okay, great. Just switching gears really quickly. On June 9th, Minister of PSPC told the committee that PSPC also offers procurement assistance to individual healthcare centers. I'm just curious, how many healthcare centers has PSPC helped so far directly, and has this number evolved over the course of the pandemic? And in what ways have we helped out?
I'll have to ask that the answer to that question is delivered in writing again as quickly as possible to our clerk. But I thank you for the question. We will now go to Madame Vignola. 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
You have 5 minutes. Thank you. I will come back to Mr. Kuzmichek's question with regards to individual health centers. How many were helped, and how were they helped?
Thank you for the question. The how they were helped, I'll start with the second part of the question. The how is largely around logistics. So we'd heard from a number of organizations, especially early on, that they were having difficulty getting their orders out of China. They were having a hard time arranging transportation, either at all or at a very a cost that they couldn't afford, frankly. So our assistance was largely through logistics out of China. It's difficult to say how many, because some of the ones we were helping were a conglomerate of long-term care facilities, etc. So where we had extra space on a plane that was coming over, we were able to squeeze some additional PPE on the plane to help out those types of organizations. So that's the primary answer is logistics. I cannot answer how many, because some of them were ordering in group. The second way I should highlight is there were a few who were having trouble just finding suppliers and or wanted advice on how to procure and contract. So we were able to put them in touch with some of our supply chain, some of our logistics folks, just to give some advice.
These health centers, are those private or public centers?
We were in touch with a mix on the long-term care facilities I mentioned, that those would have been a conglomerate of private. We also heard, though, from some hospitals and others looking for assistance as well. So it was a mix.
Okay.
By providing those health centers that requested your help, was this an incursion in the jurisdiction of provinces. Should the provinces have done this instead of PSPC?
I think, Mr. Chair, when it comes to this question of help, this was early days, and there was, struggle around understanding the logistics and getting supply. I think organizations like this were in touch with multiple levels of government, and we were collaborating with the Quebec government on logistics as well. There was everything I said about helping out with logistics earlier and finding space on planes. The federal government did the same thing with the Quebec government. So I think you were seeing, engagement across all levels of government.
Thank you. I wanted to be reassured on that point. I want to come back to the Procurement Council, which comprises people from the private sector and so on. How do we ensure that there's no conflict of interest between the goals of the council and those who are on the council, that the people on the board are really there for the right reasons and not for personal reasons? What's the process to ensure that?
Donc, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I will ask Mr. Van der Grift to answer it.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, each of the members of the committee had to declare their conflicts of interest beforehand and are required to recuse from a meeting if there's any element of it in which they would have a conflict. I would be clear, as the minister has indicated as well, the committee is not talking about individual procurements or individual contracts. It's much more at a strategy conversation in terms of what is happening out in the supply chains and out in the private and public sectors in terms of access to supplies. But there are provisions to identify conflicts and to recuse should there be a conflict that exists.
Est-ce qu'il y a eu des retraits par conflit?
Did we see anybody recuse themselves? Because we've seen that that's not always the case.
Non, il n'y a pas encore.
No, there haven't been any recusals yet during meetings. Thank you. Now, in terms of the PPE, we've seen a significant increase in international prices. Are those pressures for higher prices still there, or is there some kind of stabilization or decrease in prices?
Very, very brief answer, please.
Short answer, Mr. Chair, is it depends on the category of good. They're certainly nowhere near what they were when before COVID. They're still elevated above that. Some have come down a little bit, and I think the volatility is a bit less. But on the whole, still much higher than they were pre-COVID.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Mr. Green for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. And picking up where I left off, calling for a more integrated approach between the Public Health Agency of Canada and public services and procurement. I'm wondering, acknowledging what I feel to be some missteps early on with the National Emergency Stockpile and the rollout, what lessons have you learned, and how are you using whatever innovation you've created over the last 4 months to plan for the future?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think I'd focus in on logistics because that's really where the handoff occurs, the most important handoff between PSPC and PHAC. Understanding that the eventual client of the NES is the provinces and territories. We are looking at more streamlined logistics where for some goods, can we bypass NES altogether? Can we go right from ordering if we order on behalf of a province and ship directly to a province or territory? Or for some goods, should it go through the NES as it always has? So that we're looking at more streamlined logistics, and it depends on the category. We're a lot more discussion around sharing of information and stockpiles and how to best, where's the greatest need, I guess, in terms of orders and where it's best to collaborate on orders. And so that would be the other lesson I would share. Final one, maybe. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please. My apologies.
I was just going to say there's also lessons for us around diversity of supply chain and can we do more to better diversify our supply chains?
And as it relates to, this integrated approach that we keep hearing about, understanding that the NES has a long history going back to the 1950s, and then, of course, the resurgence of H1N1 and the first round of SARS. As it relates to the advanced treatment centers, are you familiar with, in terms of the supply of the units of advanced treatment centers?
I think where the member's heading with this question, Mr. Chair, is probably better questions for Public Health Agency, but I'm not very familiar to answer your question.
Okay, well, I'll put it to you this way. And again, this is part of the problem by not having an integrated approach, in my opinion, is that if the person responsible for procurement doesn't know exactly what the public health agency wants, we have these gaps. And I'll share this with you. The advanced treatment centers are essentially field hospitals that are to be deployed in times of emergencies. And I'm to understand that the NES ought to have had some of those. My follow-up question to you would have been, do we know if those have been deployed in remote areas, in indigenous communities and territories? And if you don't have that information, I would ask that, knowing that we haven't had an adequate response in remote communities, have there been planning or orders placed for the future acquiring of these advanced treatment centers so that we can deploy for future pandemics?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, and I actually do understand what the member's talking about. I just used a different term in my head. So we have mobile respiratory care units is what we used to call them, and we've designed two models. One more temporary and I guess easier to stand up and take down, and another that's kind of more permanent. And we are looking at piloting those. So we haven't deployed them, but we've actually well along with design of two different types, and obviously working with provinces and territories on what those designs look like.
Okay, I will have you note that on the NES website, there is reference to these being as part of their stockpile and their background. And, again, I feel like there's a responsibility and a role to be played through public services to take a more forward positioning on in the acquisition of critical supplies, knowing the abject failure of the Public Health Agency of Canada to keep the adequate supplies in place leading into this pandemic. What comment do you have on our ability to respond to future waves, knowing that we're in this hyper-competitive environment? Are you setting aside parts of your order for future emergency stockpiles? And the final question to that is, are there conversations in place to restore the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile to the adequate levels that it was prior to the previous government throwing them all away?
I suspect we're close on time, Mr. Chair, so I'll be really quick. In terms of the ordering we're doing now, and more importantly, the receipt of goods that are happening now and in the coming months, that's all about the second wave. And that's why we're also getting additional space for the NES. In terms of the questions around, I'll call them policy questions around the size of the NES, et cetera, that's not for me to speak to.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the second round of 4-minute interventions, starting with Mrs. Block.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to make sure that I've understood correctly what I think was said in response to Mr. Macaulay's intervention prior to his motion. So I'm believing what we heard earlier regarding the ethical apparel policy is that PSPC only extends, this policy only extends to primary and first tier subcontractors, and that we don't know what happens if that first tier subcontractor contracts out to additional companies. We've also, I guess, learned that PSPC or the Government of Canada is relying on a regime that has an atrocious human rights record to self-declare that they don't engage in human rights violations when producing PPE, while at the same time there has been confirmation that there are companies using work camps for production. So can you confirm that I've understood correctly your response to Mr. Macaulay on these issues?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to reiterate, step one is the self-certification piece we mentioned, and yes, the ethical apparel policy that was quoted does have kind of two levels, prime and first level down. And we also flagged earlier the integrity check that is done against contractors to look for criminal charges, etc. And that's the system that we, in broad strokes, that's the system we have in place right now.
And and I want to confirm that we don't know what happens if that first tier subcontractor contracts out to additional companies.
So, Mr. Chair, when we are doing contracting, we can have dialogue, but the actual policy itself applies to two levels down.
Okay, thank you. I'm also wondering if you can tell me what role Deloitte would have in ensuring we're not buying PPE from companies who are using forced labor. I believe they've been contracted by PSPC to help with our supply chains. And so I'm wondering if they have a role. Do they report to you any findings that would then help inform PSPC on whether or not these companies should be engaged in procurement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will ask Ariane to correct me or elaborate on just to make sure I've got this right. My understanding of the work done by Deloitte in identifying suppliers was around their ability to deliver quality of goods. I don't recall questions around such as the member is asking, but Ariane, can you confirm or correct the record here?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, Deloitte was there to help us with the logistics, helping us with identifying suppliers that could help deliver quality goods. In terms of their initial review, if they knew anything adverse, they would share it with us. But a lot of that came to PSPC to review and ensure the integrity checks were done prior to any contracting.
Okay, thank you. So I'm wondering, because I know my time is short with only 4 minutes, will the department commit to looking at the entire supply chain and every single subcontractor in China to guarantee not one bit that we are receiving is from forced labor or forced transport?
So, Mr. Chair, a couple of things on that.
We don't have time for a couple of things, Mr. Matthews. I think Mrs. Block was looking for a yes or no answer.
Part of the department's plans around modernizing procurement look at these types of questions. But I just want to flag for the committee that when you're dealing with a very deep supply chain in a faraway country, getting line of sight into these types of questions is not an easy thing to do.
Understood. We'll now go to Mr. Zuberi for 4 minutes, please.
I'd like to thank again the witnesses for testifying. I'd like to pick up on some themes, the theme actually that we just heard a moment ago about the Uyghur people. And so just to share with other members of this committee, myself and the Subcommittee on International Human Rights, we heard very disturbing testimony on Monday and Tuesday. For 7 hours on Monday, 7 hours on Tuesday, from experts and from firsthand accounts of people who have been interned or within the concentration camps in Xinjiang, the Uyghur Autonomous Region in China. We heard from experts, including Erwin Kotler and others, that what's going on there rises to the level of genocide, according to the UN Convention. We also heard that Canada's responsibility to protect doctrine is engaged and that there are crimes against humanity. We heard that there are between 1 to 1.8 million people right now who are in concentration camps in this province in China. We heard that 80% of Chinese cotton is coming from this province. We heard that there is widespread forced labor. We heard that women are being forcibly sterilized with IUDs. Men are being irreversibly sterilized. There's widespread torture and rape occurring. We heard that there's surveillance going on. Within these camps, 24/7 surveillance, except for black sites. In these black sites, there's torture, there's rape. We heard that this information is not getting out, has not gotten out until recently. Until recently, we only heard anecdotal information from survivors. In 2019, there was what's been known as the Chinese papers and other leaked documents from the Chinese Communist Party that were reported in the New York Times that showed this is a program, a system. Irwin Cotler, the former Attorney General, said that this is the biggest concentration camp since World War II that's happening right now. So it's very apt we're talking about supply chains, because supply chains is something that we as Canadians, as Canada, can do to halt, or to do our part to halt what's happening there. We heard testimony from Amy Lear with the Center for Strategic and International Studies. She's the director of the Human Rights Initiative there. She said, and to pick up on the supply chains and the previous question, she said that you need strong Mandarin reading and skills to do the required research. There are a lot of public documents. America has looked into these documents and is able to determine who is profiting from this forced labor, which subcontractors are profiting from this forced labor. We know that within the province where these concentration camps are right now, that this is not the end product. So to pick up on what was previously asked, is it possible for the Government of Canada and the department in particular to go further and beyond these 2 points, which is self-certification and doing a criminal check on companies, to go beyond and to do the research that is required to get somebody with strong Mandarin reading skills to ensure that we are not unwittingly wearing masks that are produced by forced labor, unwittingly having cotton shirts that are produced by forced labor. This is a human catastrophe. We have a responsibility to protect. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Zabari, thank you very much for your testimony. And I believe, Mr. Matthews, to adequately respond would take you far beyond our allocated time. So I would ask that if you can provide, to the best of your ability, a fulsome answer to Mr. Zabari, once again in writing to our clerk as quickly as possible. We'll now go to Mr. Abulte for 4 minutes, please.
Yes, I would like to build on Mrs. Block and also what Mr. Zaberi have asked the questions, and try to assist Mr. Matthews a little bit on this end. I've done international trade big part of my life. Now, when you place orders overseas, you place it through a Canadian supplier. Is that correct or not?
So in normal times, Mr. Chair, our go-to would be a Canadian supplier. Under the COVID crisis, we have done more dealings directly with the manufacturer to order at scale, but normal case, the member is quite right.
Okay, so what's the percentage of orders that you fill directly through manufacturers in China?
Under the current environment, we've got about 10 to 12, probably 10, let's say 10.
How many major suppliers? I don't want to count every single small suppliers that you've dealt with, but on the major suppliers, and so far we haven't received a large number. I mean, most of the orders that you've received less than 50%, some of them less than 15%. On N95 was about 2% last month. So is there a way to backtrack on some of these orders, at least until you do some due diligence on these suppliers?
So I think, Mr. Chair, the members touched upon an important issue here, because the diversification of the market around N95s, as I mentioned earlier, we get some from the United States and the vast majority from China. And the reason we have been doing that is because that's where the market is. And so while there is always a possibility to look into contracts, and we've looked a bit, and there's been questions here around, can you go deeper? Which is an interesting question, because it's not an area that's easy to get line of sight into. Okay. But I'm guessing where the member's headed here, if the idea is maybe we can go elsewhere, not easy to do on the N95 market.
Mr. Let me also suggest another thing that you've done. As I said, we've got only 2% of the N95. So 98% of the orders, which is supposed to be over close to 190 million masks that haven't been received, as far as I know. I'm not, unless you have different number for me. So until you know, I mean, how legit those suppliers, whether they're meeting all the requirements that's very crucial for Canadians and for our values. You can. I'm not sure how deep into the contracts whether the penalties are, but to be honest with you, I think you have a way out. If you have a way out, I think you should examine those suppliers And for the first wave of COVID, we only were able to receive 2% of the total N95 masks that's supposedly very crucial to be used for safety of Canadians. So if during the first wave, we only received 2% of the total supplies that we've ordered,
Can we talk
so
about
why can't we stop now?
So, Mr. Chair, the only thing I will add to that, because I suspect we're bumping up on time, is the updated numbers on N95. We're up to just over 50 million masks on an order total of 150 million or so.
No,
so
your number
roughly about a one-third.
Your number was 221 million on the first. So you less than 50% on less than 25% on those. So we still have 75% of orders that haven't been fulfilled, and probably the 25% that you've suggested may not all came from China. If am I correct or not? You probably can correct me if you wish.
And the other thing I should add, Mr. Chair, is that we do have Medicom, a Canadian company, coming on board in N95 as well, which is our first foray into a domestic manufacturing in this area, which is, I think, a really important part of this question, as well as domestic manufacturing ability.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Mr. Labute, if we're out of time. We will now go to Mr. Duran for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will shift gears a little bit. It has to do with with some of the supply ships and the shipyards that we have in Canada. I'm wondering if you could give an update to this committee on the, because I know we were going to look at it at some point, and I hope that it was Mr. McCauley's motion that was adopted by this committee earlier this year, pre-COVID-19. But I'm just hoping you can give this committee a bit of an update on where we're at with this.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So just in terms of an update on the joint supply ship, there was a contract recently signed, as you're aware, which gives us some certainty on the way forward in terms of the build. We're still looking at 2023 for the first one, and 2025 for the second one is what's penciled in. While we're on the topic of ships, we should mention Arctic Offshore Patrol ship is coming in this summer. The first one, with the second one, should be in late 2020. And so that's kind of the short answer on the shipyard question. Does that answer your question, the member's question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, for now, and I'm sure we'll get another opportunity to discuss this. One of the questions I had was with regards to procurement, and you've mentioned this on the opening of your remarks for PPE. You've now, the department has now decided to contract out to a larger audience, if we can say this, because I think I'm assuming that you're getting a handle on PPE and whatnot, and now you can go out to the broader public. And you've mentioned the potential RFP that's going to Indigenous communities who will be able to bid on it. And I'm assuming that's are we using the set aside program for this, or?
So member raises an interesting point, Mr. Chair. So yes, we are looking to compete more and more now as markets regularize a bit. We are seeing less urgency because the warehouses are getting full. We have organized a few procurements that will be competitive, and the member did flag the Indigenous or the one open only to Aboriginal businesses. Ariane, do you want to speak to the specifics around that one?
Thank you. Yes, since May, we've done over 10 open solicitations. They are open to competition and posted. We have one that closed on Indigenous cloth coverings, and another one that we're doing currently for Indigenous disposable masks. So we have one that is underway now, and one that we're looking to award in the coming days.
Great, thank you. And on the existing contracts that we have with suppliers for PPE, if we just rewind 3.5 months ago, we know that everybody was looking for visors, and now I can find a visor at practically every corner of a street. So I'm just wondering, have we put these protective measures in our contracts to ensure that we don't pay the perhaps the market price 3.5 months ago, and we pay the market price today as opposed to the higher price? Is there protective measures in there for those particular procurements?
So, Mr. Chair, where there's a long-term supply arrangement in place, it often contains the fixed price for a certain period of time, and then with a chance to revisit in the future. For the the short term, they've signed up for a specific price that was the going rate at the time. Most of them, to be frank, there's a fixed price in the contract, but for the really long term ones, there is some variation possible, up or down. And members quite right on things like face shields, quite stable, and so easier story going forward. But there are other commodities that are still pretty tricky. Gloves is one that's really worth keeping an eye on, and so that price commodity might go up quite. The price there is quite volatile, is what I'd say.
Thank you thank you very much. Excuse me. We'll now go to our final 2-minute interventions. Mr. Green, are you still with us? Mr. Green, I believe, has left. I was going to give him to speak first, but Madame Vignola, you have 2 minutes.
Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais revenir sur.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to the announcement of the contracts for the masks. We heard that there were Indigenous companies that could be involved. How many have been involved so far?
I'll get my colleague Ms. Reza to clarify or correct, but I think of the bids received so far on the first one, I believe we're over 200 bids from Indigenous businesses. Ariane, est-ce que tu peux élaborer un peu?
Ariane, could you tell us more about that, please? Yes, I'm looking for the numbers here. There's one contract that has been completed, and I believe we received about 200 bids and there's another contract, or a call for tender rather, and it will be coming to an end on July 29th, so we can come back with you with more numbers. Okay, that's of those 200 bids, how many are from companies owned by Indigenous owners? Thank you. We're checking right now because the call for proposals just ended. So we are looking to see how many Indigenous companies submitted bids and for the details. Thank you. So what I'm understanding is that we'll get that answer in writing a bit later. Now, this call for proposals was for disposable masks. We're using so many masks that are disposable. I mean, these are resources that we're just throwing away after a few hours. Is there any way in Canada to produce masks that are reusable, that we can sterilize and reuse?
I have to interrupt and ask that, once again, excellent question, but if you could provide the answer in writing, as I would advise you several times before in this meeting, as quickly as possible to our clerk. Colleagues, that is the end of our interventions. And to Mr. Matthews, to you and all of your officials, once again, thank you for being with us for the 4th or 5th time. I look forward to sometime, hopefully in the near future, where we'll be able to meet in person as opposed to virtually. But I do thank you for your testimony, for you and your officials for being here. It's always been very helpful and very informative. And you and your officials are excused.
Mr. Chair, could I just offer one thing? Apparently I can't count. I said there was 12 essential services. There's 10. So I apologize for my poor counting, and I just wanted to correct that.
Thank you very much for correcting the record. Sir, you are excused. Colleagues, I'm not going to be suspending this meeting. We're going to be going directly into committee business. If our witnesses care to take their leave, they can do so. And we will not be suspending, but we are in public. We are not in camera. Colleagues, at the last meeting of July 9th, when we adopted the motion to continue on with a study of the We Charity, we had a motion that was approved. That motion also listed 4 ministers that were going to be invited to appear. Also at that meeting, I'd asked all of you to kind of indicate to us through the clerk what your personal schedule or holiday schedules may be, so we can try and come up with a schedule for those 4 additional meetings on We to the best of our ability. Now, I have received some information. Mr. Kazmierczuk, for an example, I understand you'll be gone from July 31st to August the 10th, but it appears most of the other committee members would be available for most of August and most of September. We also had discussed, however, we would like to wait until the Finance Committee had completed their meetings, which my understanding is will be completed on July 28th, to examine what testimony they have been able to uncover, and then set our own schedule from there. So with those few words, I would just like to offer any colleagues who want to make a suggestion as to meeting times. If, for an example, you wanted to have 4 meetings all in August, or 2 meetings in August, 2 meetings in September, or if you wanted the ability for myself as chair to set meeting dates on your behalf, or finally, if you want to wait until we hear the final testimony of the Finance Committee on July 28th before we go forward with any scheduling. But I would ask all committee members this. I have not received any suggestions for witnesses beyond the 4 ministers that were noted in the July 9th motion that was adopted. So if there are additional witnesses any committee member would like to have appear before our committee as we study the We Charity situation, I would like to get those as quickly as possible. For an example, if we wanted to have meetings that first week in August, to date, we don't have any other additional witnesses suggested except for the ministers. So I'm encouraging all of you to think long and hard as to who you would like to see appear as we continue with our study, and get that information to our clerk as quickly as possible. But with that, I'll open it up for comments or suggestions as to how committee members would like to proceed and what the timing of our 4 additional meetings would be. If you want to just raise your hand, we will try and accommodate you as best we can. Mr. McKinnon, I see your hand raised.
Well, just very quickly, since no one else had their hand raised, I just want to note I did also send a couple of dates that I would hope we would avoid to the clerk, although I did only do so yesterday. And the other thing is, indeed, we noted some ministers that we may want to invite. I know, look, that there's some interest among my colleagues to perhaps have as many of these hearings as possible. I would just say that I don't think it is becoming on this committee to invite ministers who had little or no or highly peripheral involvement in this issue. That is certainly the case with respect to the officials you just saw, and indeed the minister at PSPC. I can't comment on other departments, but obviously Treasury Board is also a department that I don't think had any involvement in this issue, but they can obviously speak for themselves. But I don't think that we ought to go casting wide nets in terms of inviting people who had little or nothing to do with this issue. So my posit would be that we can perhaps whittle down that initial list of ministers.
Thank you. I now have, I've got, I see, I have some hands up. I've got Mr. McKinnon, I'm sorry, Mr. McCauley, Madame Vignola, and Madame Block in that order. Mr. McCauley.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I think in August, I'll leave it up to, I think, yourself and our clerk to work out dates. But I think several of us were unavailable until August or till the end of July. And as the witnesses, yeah, we'll send them in. And to Mr. McKinnon's comments, you know, I guess the will of the committee. But I think we should be calling ministries who should have been involved, perhaps, or should have had oversight. It's just like the issue of the self-certifying. It's not good enough. Well, we didn't do this. But I'll leave it to the will of the committee. But sometime in August, thanks.
Thank you, Madame Vignola.
Non, donc, pour faire...
All right. So, in line with what Mr. Macaulay was saying, I would prefer 4 meetings in August. I know we spoke earlier about a study of 1 meeting, so that would be 5 meetings in August, including the WE charity and the tech study. And in terms of witnesses, I will send you my list soon. We, PSBC, and Treasury Board still... Oh, right, sorry. What I meant was the PSPC is not currently involved in the We charity issue, but if we want to think about how to avoid this kind of situation in the future, it would be good to hear what they have to say.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Block.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I guess, not to be combative, but I would suggest to Mr. McKinnon that the will of this committee is very clear in the unanimous acceptance of the motion that I brought forward, where the ministers that we wanted to have appear before committee are listed. So, I'm not interested in trying to whittle down that list when we indicated what our intent was, and this motion was unanimously adopted by the committee. I think you can leave it in, if you prefer, you can leave it up to members of the opposition to thread that needle to demonstrate how ministers were involved, or, as my colleague said, why they should have been on what is becoming a very huge scandal on this whole awarding of this contract. So, we've stated in the motion what we wanted to see happen. I think it's clear, and I'm looking forward to those 4 meetings that we established through the motion. I am available whenever they need to be scheduled, and we do have a fuller list than just the ministers that are listed in the motion for witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Joanne. I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, and I think what my colleague Mr. McKinnon is saying is, don't be surprised if obviously it's the will of the committee, but don't be surprised if some departments will say, don't know, weren't involved. I mean, so we're trying to be helpful so you don't waste 2 hours of your time asking question. And it's frustrating from the part of the opposition or any members of parliament who are part of this committee to ask questions to officials and they say, sorry, don't know, wasn't involved. So that's just what we're just warning you that in your list, and we didn't raise it at the last meeting, that PSPC and Treasury Board had nothing to do with this. So we're saying, we're just warning you now so you don't come surprised in future meetings when we invite the officials to come before us. They say, sorry, we weren't involved. So I don't know how many times I can say that, but we've let the committee be warned.
Thank you, Mr. Johari. Mr. Johari, I saw your hand raised, I believe.
Yes, it is my understanding that our office has reached out to the clerk and highlighted the areas the weeks that we may be challenged to be able to participate, those weeks being the first week of August and the first week of September. As far as sitting and the number of sittings, a even split between August and September would be much appreciated. As you know, the economy is opening up, and part of our job is to actively reach out to our stakeholders in our riding to make sure that we hear from them and we get their feedback of how the government program has helped them. So I would appreciate if the chair and the clerk could take that into consideration and even out the number of sessions, whether it's 4 or 5, during the month of August and month of September, to allow us to be able to ensure that given the opening of the economy, we can proactively reach out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just to inform all committee members from a, I guess, logistical standpoint, when the House of Commons is not sitting, we are reasonably restricted as to how many meetings we can have at one time. In fact, there's only 1 meeting at a time. When the House of Commons is sitting, whether it be virtually or in person, then we can accommodate more than just 1 meeting at a time. What I'm hearing, I believe, is that most members, given the suggestions and advice that you have given myself and our clerk, would be comfortable if between myself and our clerk, we came up with a meeting schedule and just called the meetings, giving you adequate notice, of course, based on the information and advice you've given us as to your own personal schedules and the timing of meetings held in the next month or two. Does that encapsulate the feelings of most members? You're going to be comfortable in allowing myself to call the meetings based on that information? I see a bunch of thumbs up. I don't see any thumbs down. So based on that, colleagues, I think that's how we will proceed. If you have any additional suggestions, of course, you can always go directly to our clerk and we will take that into consideration. But for now, let's leave it until the end of this month, until the July 28th final meeting of finance has been completed. And then we will advise you as to the schedule of meetings in August and beyond, if necessary. Of course, all of this is contingent upon our whips approving our suggested meeting schedule. All right. Seeing no other hands raised, colleagues, thank you once again.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Clerk, I think we need to vote on something, do we not?
I think if you want that to be sort of clearly reflected in the minutes, I would propose that what you've summarized is that essentially that the committee authorized the chair to set the schedule for the committee's meetings for the month of August. This would allow you the flexibility to set the meetings as the committee is authorizing you to do so. If that's the motion that you're happy, I can do the roll call on that.
Yes, please go ahead, Paul.
Okay, and for the roll call, I will begin now. Again, the motion is that the chair be authorized to set the committee's schedule for the month of August. Monsieur Drouin. Is he still here?
Monsieur Drouin? Oui, en faveur.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Johari.
In support.
Mr. Kazmierczak.
Support.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Mr. Zuberi.
Wait, yes.
Mr. Abouteff.
Support.
Ms. Block. Thank you. Mr. Macaulay.
Yes, thank you.
Madame Vignola.
Je suis en accord.
And Mr. Green. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Green is left. Pardon me. Mr. Chair, that is 9 in favor, none against.
Thank you. That motion then is carried. And colleagues, we will be getting back to you and hopefully giving you as much advance notice as possible. But I have a final word from our clerk. That motion, however, was carried. Paul, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to reiterate for the benefit of the analyst and myself, if we could get the witness lists as soon as possible, it greatly increases our ability to get the witnesses that you want. So just a reminder to the members, we would appreciate receiving those witness lists as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, thank you once again. It looks like we're actually going to adjourn this meeting on time. Once again, hopefully you're all healthy and safe. And until we meet again, we are adjourned.
Bonne fin de journée.